Hello and welcome to this very special show. I have with me experts to talk more about what really is happening right now as far as Kashmir is concerned, the larger geopolitical game that is currently playing out both on strategic as well as on tactical fronts. I am Gauri Dwivedi in conversation with General Asnan, Arif Ajakia, and Sushil Pandit, three men who know far more as far as what Pakistan is thinking, what's on ground in Kashmir, and what will be the situation going forward for India as well. Let's divide these gentlemen into two parts. One is, of course, the strategic aspect of the larger implications of the government's announcement, the posturing with the IMD weather forecast, coming just days after Pakistani Supreme Court decision on Gilgit-Baltistan. But before that, I want to address the issue as far as ceasefire violations are concerned that Pakistan is doing. And General Aslan, you understand that territory far better than anybody else. Explain to us that even in the midst of a humanitarian crisis, you have Pakistan violating ceasefire twice the number of times this year than what it did last year.
See, Gauri, it is very clear. The 5th of August decisions which were taken by the government of India shook Pakistan's leadership. And when we say Pakistan leadership, it primarily means the army leadership, the deep state inside Pakistan. And they realized that diplomatically, politically, on the economic front, and to a very great extent, even the hearts and minds front, if they don't do much, anything further in Kashmir, the game is up for them. The options are running out for them completely. It was expected that come the summer, after a very heavy winter that we have had, some kind of an activity will commence immediately. Because if Pakistan does not take this issue up internationally and does not bring about the sensitivities of the world to its favor, then the game is up as far as Kashmir is concerned. Now, what better way than to do it by military means and on the line of control, because these are places where the moment some activity starts and violence starts emanating there, the concern of the world starts going up. Everyone knows these are nuclear armed neighbors. Pakistan has lived under this illusion that they have been able to cause a major deterrence in our strategy. There is no truth to that at all. But they somehow perceive that to get the world on their side, they need the attention of the world, particularly at a time when the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting the entire world. So therefore, 1st of April, I would say, is the date from where the actual military activity of infiltration commenced. It was facilitated by the fact that the snows were melting, and to facilitate infiltration, a tremendous amount of firing was started on the line of control. It's not in Kashmir alone. More of the firing is taking place in the Jammu region, particularly in the Poonch, Naushera, Rajouri areas. We feel always that the infiltration is only being attempted up in Kashmir. A lot of infiltration is attempted in the Jammu sector. And the moment there are exchanges of fire, and the moment that there are effects on the local population around, what happens is that the world starts taking notice. So far, it has not really happened in that big way. The FATF has given some kind of a reprieve to Pakistan for 3-4 months. So Pakistan is also attempting to take advantage of that. And it's hoping that they will be able to push in a sufficient number of Pakistani terrorists into North Kashmir. Because the game in Kashmir so far, in the last 3 years, appears to have been played more by the local terrorists in South Kashmir, who are not under the control of the Pakistani leadership to that extent. Riaz Naiku had all resisted it. Even before that, Burhan Wani had resisted it. So the attempt is to go back to 1991, the time when they took a decision that a greater preponderance of Pakistani effectiveness by inducting more Pakistani terrorists was necessary. And that is what you are seeing today happening on the LOC and in the Kashmir front.
But sir, then let me ask you this. This is, data that is available publicly that we have, which is that as of now, there are more launch pads across LOC that are operational, 14 of them that are operational now. And the number of terrorists who are ready to be pushed inside the Indian territory is 450. Earlier, that number was 240. So obviously, which is why I asked you that question, that, even in the midst of a humanitarian crisis, Pakistan's jihad factory is working overtime.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. On the legal front, they've taken certain measures inside Pakistan itself, and their dependence on people like Hafiz Saeed, etc., continues to remain. And let me tell you that these efforts which are going on of pushing in terrorists inside these 200 to 450, and probably the assessments could increase as we go along into the summer. The effort is to try and bring in mass infiltration, have any amount of casualties. No one in the terrorist leadership ranks ever looks at the type of casualties that they sustain. They hope 50, 60, 70 terrorists, if they can get in,
Okay.
it will make a
Okay.
difference immediately to
So,
North.
let me on that note. Hmm. Okay, let me on that note bring in both Arif as well as Sushil ji on the broadcast. Arif ji, to you first. I want to understand that it's not like coronavirus has not hit Pakistan. It's not like there are no massive deaths happening there. It's a crisis that the world is facing. But I want to ask you, how long will the army keep diverting funds, attention, resources completely towards this jihad away from bigger concerns?
Well, Pakistan Army is a business entity, and their business is never shut down in lockdowns in this pandemic. The problem with Pakistan Army is, as General Saab said, exactly that is the scenario, that Pakistan has to internationalize issue of Jammu and Kashmir. The infiltration that General Saab was talking, I would say that in Punjab there is very much infiltration going on. And on Nepal side, you can see that Chinese soldiers are also occupying Indian soldiers. They are also in a battle since last few days. And ISI has a good network in Nepal also. So it's an attack from all over sides. Now, why Pakistan Army is doing this during this pandemic? Because the Baloch issue has intensified since last few months. Balochistan, there is a full-fledged war going on. Pakistan Army is holding an operation there. In Pashtun belt, there is an operation going on, and Pakistan is facing very much resistance from Pashtuns now. So Sindh, Balochistan, Pashtuns, all these have come out against the policies of Pakistan Army. Now, Pakistan Army, during this crisis of economy, that Pakistan does not have money to pay salaries of civil servants,
yes,
everyone is pointing towards army, that because of this army, today we are in this situation, because their policies have backfired and their military budget has been so huge that Pakistan could never develop. In this situation, the best thing is to have a small war with India to divert the attention
and
unite
but
the Pakistanis.
Are they succeeding?
Yeah, but now
is the Pakistani army succeeding in fooling Pakistani people?
But that's what they are doing since 72 years. They have created a nation of sheep who does not question. Anyone questions cannot live in Pakistan. Even ex-Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif had to leave. Ex-Prime Minister Benazir used to live in exile. In Pakistan, nobody can speak the truth. It is a banana republic controlled by its oppressive army. Nobody is happy with this army. And a war with India may bring sentiments of anti-India, Hindu hatred, which has been created since Zia's time, Zia-ul-Haq's time.
Yes.
Maybe the nation will get united and they will stop pointing out. Now, people in Pakistan are asking that why we are investing more than our 50% budget on this army, for what purpose? They are not fighting a war. They are not liberating Kashmir. They are not doing anything. So to stop this target of common people on Pakistan army, maybe they want to shift. Now they cannot fight a war, full-fledged war with India. But in Kargil they did. So they can do, they are used to do, like in 1948, they did tribal invasion. Now General Saab is explaining that from South Kashmir, we are getting more and more people to fight like 1990 and 1991. I would say that it is happening. In Kashmir, Pakistan is playing since last 30 years, since 1989. And we are unable to stop, sorry to say.
Okay. Sushil Pandit, let me bring you in. You are a man who's always been very clear, calls a spade a spade. Respond to what Arif Ajakia just said, that, at some level, some of this should have been anticipated or could have been anticipated, that come whatever crisis the humanity faces, Pakistani army, the Rawalpindi GHQ is very clear. Their priorities, where do they lie?
Well, this is almost written in stone, but we in India don't want to read the writing on the wall. We are utterly confused in our policy towards Pakistan. I wonder if there is a Pakistan policy. In fact, there is no institutionalization of our responses to Pakistan. Every time there is a change in the government, the new prime minister thinks that he has a divine mandate to solve all these problems, and he can. So everything changes. And Pakistan uses this as an opportunity. So whether it is Morarji Desai, whether it was Indra Kumar Gujral, whether it was Dr. Manmohan Singh or Atal Bihari Vajpayee, you see a lack of continuity in our Pakistan policy. And Pakistan has taken advantage of this. Number two, I'll just share with you one interesting aspect that very often we lose sight of. After August 5 decisions, Pakistan did not take even 48 hours to expel our High Commissioner.
Yes.
Ajay Bisaria was first told that he's not welcome in Pakistan, and before he could withdraw, he was formally expelled in order to humiliate him.
Yes.
And till date, we do not have high commissioners in each other's capital.
Yes.
This is unprecedented.
Mm.
And imagine, India has never done this even at the gravest of provocation. When Mumbai happened, did we expel? Did we even tell him to go back? When attack on parliament happened. So the point is, our diplomacy has never been as resolute, as hard-knuckled, as business-like as Pakistan has been. They seem to have pushed us to a corner where onus of keeping peace on the international border and LOC lies only with us. Because we have painted ourselves into a corner in terms of not letting Kashmir internationalize. They think that they have a trump. Every time they escalate, we feel that we should not allow it to internationalize, so we keep soaking in punches. And they see an opportunity in this. They go ahead and attack us and trouble us with impunity because we have a stake in not letting this issue getting internationalized. I want to ask, is there anything left to internationalize it any further? Isn't it internationalized enough to the saturation point? What are we scared of? So
then let me ask you this.
Blackmail happens.
Then let me ask you this, that how do you... Yeah, sure, go ahead, finish, yeah.
Just as the nuclear blackmail happens, where onus is on India not to let the confrontation or conflict rise to a nuclear flashpoint, likewise, onus seems to be on us not to let things go out of hand so that Kashmir issue gets quote-unquote internationalized. And these are the chinks in our armor that Pakistan wants to exploit all the time.
Has been able to exploit. Okay, then General Aslan, then respond to some of these questions that Sushil Pandit raised, and then also the larger issue that we're talking about, the posturing as far as the Gilgit-Baltistan issue is concerned, because it gets complicated with Chinese investments, huge Chinese presence. It's not a simple India-Pakistan issue anymore.
I agree
very largely with what Mr. Sushil Pandit has said. But let me make one or two clarifications. I think by and large, after the 5th of August and even before that, the efforts by the government of India to give greater latitude to the army, Indian army, have been on. It's not that the Indian army has been held back in any way. And in recent times, even after the 1st of April incidents which took place in the north of Kupwara, you found that we were in proactive engagement of the Neelam Valley and places like that. I don't think we are afraid any longer of internationalizing this issue as far as the engagements on the line of control are concerned. We want to punish Pakistan. We know that their army is weaker. We know that their economy is weaker. And by drawing them into these kind of situations which they paint for themselves, they are the ones who are going to suffer. So I think that the mindset of the government of India has changed over a period of time. Mr. Modi made his efforts in 2015. He made brave efforts, starting from Ufa, going to Bangkok with the NSA's meeting, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj going to Islamabad for the Heart of Asia conference, and things like that. All the efforts were made. Mr. Modi himself going to Pakistan on that surprise visit. These were brave efforts which went on. But since the response was just not there, I think the government of India decided a stronger policy. How strong is a matter of calibration. And we are not looking at war immediately or something like that, because war itself is not going to resolve problems. We are looking at calibration, forcing Pakistan's hand, exposing its army internationally to everyone else. I think Pakistan takes advantage very largely also of its geostrategic location. And that, as a military analyst, I can tell you, Pakistan's location is one of its greatest advantages. The fact that China looks for the corridor through it to Gwadar, the fact that the United States looks for China to fight the war in Afghanistan, looks to Pakistan to fight the war in Afghanistan, Russia wants to keep that area stable because they are always
the fact that even
about
Saudis are pumping in money because it shares a huge border with Iran. There's no end to it. Yes.
And they have taken full advantage of this. Our requirement for us is to have more proactive diplomacy, stronger diplomacy in conjunction with our military activity on the line of control, and there should be no holding back on that at all, either COVID-19 or no COVID-19.
Okay. Arifji, explain to us, how do you see, the very important decision that the government took and sent out a message? One can also turn around and say this is a message to Pakistan that, if at all we're ever going to sit on a table ever on Kashmir, it's only going to be for your side of the territory that you are holding illegally. Don't even think about what India has. That's another extremely important point. But tell us, how do you see this, especially how the international community sees this decision?
Well, I strongly agree with Janal Saab and Sushilji. They both are correct in saying that on diplomatic level, I think that India is not as strong as Pakistan, and then aggressiveness. Now tell me, there is no rights movement of Sikhs like Khalistan in India, but there is Khalistan 2020 and these things. Pakistan is pumping money. Pakistan is doing everything to internationalize Khalistan, to internationalize Kashmir. Why India is not internationalizing Balochistan issue? Pakistani leaders are screaming that minorities in India are dying. Show me one minority person in India who is dying because of his religion or anything. But in Pakistan, minorities is really dying, getting converted, facing worst human rights violations.
Yes.
Nobody is in India is speaking about it. No diplomatic level efforts to support them. No Baloch, Pashtun, Muhajir, Sindhi, minorities, women rights activists, nobody is supported by Indians. While anyone picking up a flag against India or Hindutva or Hinduism
finds
or
space under the Pakistani umbrella.
Pakistan. Yes. Why India cannot do this aggressive policy? I don't say tit for tat, but for motherland, India has to come to save humanity in Balochistan, to come to save humanity in Pashtun areas, in Pakistan areas, the minorities. We look at our motherland because after all, we are Indian origin. Pakistanis want to be Turkish. If they want to search their history, their origin in Turkey is Arabs and Chinese, they can do. But my origin is India and I'm looking to my motherland. That please help us. We don't want tit for tat or this thing, but there should be a policy of aggressiveness. I know India has a history of never invading any country. And I don't ask you to invade anyone, but at least support these grassroots movements. That's
an important point.
Of your,
and now tell policy. Us, sir, how do you see the Gilgit Baltistan message that the government has sent out?
Well, this is a small token. Pakistan is showing Srinagar's weather reports in 70s and 80s. So this is not a big thing. The problem is that why now? Modi ji is doing many things now. But why previous governments never tried anything seriously like this? They never took up diplomatic effort to get back POK, Gilgit-Baltistan, which are Indian territories. Now, this government has been doing many things since last 1 year. I have seen that they are doing so many things. But they have to have an aggressive foreign policy, diplomatic level. I go to UN, I see that there is a Khalistan protest. There are 1,000 people, 900 are Pakistanis there. Only 10, 15, 6 are there. Rest are Pakistanis there. Why?
But these are optics. It's a perception battle that India is obviously not winning. And that is exactly
Now,
what you're
200
saying. This
in
narrative
small city
building, this
of
optics
Geneva.
building,
In
Pakistan
small
has
city
been
of
very
Geneva, there are
successfully able to do it.
now in small city of
Yes.
Geneva, there are 200 embassies. Now their staff,
Yes.
when they pass from there and they see, they don't see that this is 1,000 people are sick or not. They say 6 of 1,000 people are doing protest.
That's a very
Now
important
Pakistan
point.
is doing.
Perception,
Now
optics,
I went to
narrative building.
Davos
Yes.
last year to protest against Imran Khan. I had only 10 people with me because India is not supporting, because nobody is supporting us. Now you can understand that Kashmir, they can do so many activities because Pakistan is investing millions of dollars.
Sushil ji, how do you see that? What Arit ji just said, and the larger issue that as he said, that is it really tokenism? Is this a larger message? Let's also not forget that there is a CPEC corridor. It goes to Gilgit. At last count, $55 billion had already been invested. China is not going to sit around waiting for any increase in hostilities, jeopardizing its investments.
You see, these are the examples where we do not even use tokenism in a consistent manner. Forget doing something serious on the ground. It has taken us decades to even contemplate reporting weather about Gilgit-Baltistan. And let me tell you, these are such fine, very, very subtle diplomatic measures which are completely lost on a thick-skinned Pakistan. If I were ruling Pakistan, I would request India to give us the weather forecast for the entire nation because we don't have the proper meteorological survey. They would be that shameless. So we are actually wasting our time on absolutely sterile token measures.
Okay.
And as far as perception building, as far as narrative war is concerned, we have not even invested enough thought into it. Forget doing something about it.
So what would be that one specific measure? I know you've cried hoarse on so many platforms about what India should do. And you've been extremely disappointed as well. But I want to ask you, Sushil Pandit, that one key thing that the government ought to do right now. And that's a question then I'll ask to General Hasnain as well.
Yeah. So I'm saying let Government of India learn from the Indian diaspora where individuals take initiative because government doesn't do anything. They spend their own money, they spend time, they make effort, they mobilize people at their own expense across US, across UK. And the embassy, the high commissions do not move a little finger. If only they could help them, support them. If there is a debate in the House of Commons, High Commission doesn't even mobilize MPs. We used to have a caucus of American congressmen. More than 90 of them were there when Indo-US nuclear deal was being debated. I remember Ambassador Ronen Sen had worked very hard. But that was one-time affair on one issue. Where is that caucus disappeared? Where are our all-party groups in US Parliament? Where is our mobilization in European Parliament?
Diplomatic issues continue to remain. But General Hasnain, I want to ask you, sir, what do you think should be that one key decision that we can take, and that should include military measures as well? You understand military science very well, sir. You can tell us there as well the next key measure or the next key step that the government, the Prime Minister ought to take.
See, first of all, I go along with what Mr. Sushil Pandit just said, right? His critique of our policies to a great extent is right. But I'll also say that the government of India has been making efforts of late. All of them have not culminated into some kind of a major campaign as such. By the time that the summer was coming in, we got hit by COVID-19. I'm sure if this had not happened, perhaps we would have been making some greater strides at this time. But one aspect I will particularly comment on while agreeing with Mr. Pandit about this. A simple thing like the number of strategic think tanks around the world. Now, I'll tell you, if I went to a particular country where Pakistan does not even have diplomatic relations. And I was speaking in that country and I thought, maybe this is one place where I can speak my mind and there'll be no one here to counter me at all. I was surprised that at the breakfast table in the hotel, I met 3 Pakistanis on the table with me in a country where there was no diplomatic relations with that country. I realized everywhere in the world what Pakistan has invested in, which we need to do and perhaps take a lesson out of it, is that you need to bring in your diplomats, your retired diplomats, your bureaucrats, your think tanks, your analysts, people like Mr. Pandit himself, me, all of us. We need to be speaking in different capitals of the world simultaneously. In Washington, New York, Brussels, Paris, London, Sydney, Singapore. All these countries make a difference. All of them make a difference. And policies normally, what is written in the media, what comes out in Fox News or what comes out in CNN, normally emanates from these think tanks. So we find that the media will also get partially not controlled, but will get affected with our narratives. We got to be very clear with our narratives. One of the unfortunate things in India, which I'm sure Mr. Pandit will agree with me, is that our strategic culture, while the government understands a lot of things, by and large, we have not developed a culture in our academia. We have not developed it in our army itself. So as a result, what happens is people know the tactical game, that people know the operational game, but they don't know the strategic game. They don't know how to combine diplomacy along with the military strategy. So these are some of the shortcomings. I'm sure that with a lot of thought being given to it today, with the kind of structures that we have put up with our National Security Advisor's office and his organization and things like that, things are improving. In the last 5 years, things have improved tremendously. But we need to do much, much more. And I would say the combination of military coercion, of which we should not be afraid to be proactive. Light on the line of control, whether it be in Gilgit, Pakistan, whether it be with Baluchistan or anyone else. I spoke with the Pakistani general. I remember a couple of generals in one meeting. And I said, if you talk about Kashmir, I will talk about Baluchistan. And he jumped up immediately to say, you're talking about an integral part of Pakistan. I said, what do you think Kashmir is? Is it not an integral part of India? And this is what they started questioning. Because they say, no, the UN resolution says it's not an integral part of India. No, we have not been able to counter that narrative effectively. We need to do it.
Okay, completely out of time. RFG, please, 30 seconds. I know, Sushil Pandit, we're going to have a second round of this discussion and probably focus more on, the internal fissures in Pakistan as well. Because, as Mr. Arif pointed out on several of his videos, that how soon that country could actually disintegrate. He said September, which merits a separate discussion. We're going to do that. But as we wrap up, 30 seconds, Arif Razakia, please tell us that one thing you think sitting in London that the Indian government should do right now, even in the midst of Pakistan continuing to violate ceasefire with the message that India sent out to Gilgit-Baltistan, that one thing that you think the Modi government ought to do right now?
Only one thing to do, nothing else. Just take back your territory back. Nothing else. Take back your territory, and that's
okay,
all.
Sometimes, the most complicated things are said in a single statement. All right, the most complicated geopolitical issue has been said in a single statement. All right, thanks much to all the panelists, to all three of you, General Hasnain, Sushil Pandit, Arif Razakia. As I said, maybe there'll be another conversation around Pakistan and the issues that it faces. Thanks much for watching this very special show, this very special discussion where we focused on the issues that are at stake, the geopolitical ramifications of India's decision to start that weather forecast amidst Pakistan violating ceasefire violations. Thanks for watching.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.